So we're in The Great Gatsby, Chapter 5, Part B. So Gatsby is telling Nick, Nick asks Gatsby what business he's in, and first of all Gatsby says none of your business, and then he says, oh, I've been in several things. I was in the drug business and then I was in the oil business, but I'm not in either one now. So it can mean basically anything. And then he says to Nick, well, do you mean you've been thinking over what I proposed the other night, which is to give him a side business, to give him extra money, and they're interrupted by Daisy, who comes out, and then she realizes that Gatsby lives on the house which is opposite Nick's, and she says, that huge place there, and he says, do you like it? It's as if he's designed this house that Daisy should like it. He kind of created it for her. And she says, I love it, but I don't see how you live there all alone. And Gatsby says I always keep it full of interesting people, night and day, people who do interesting things, celebrated people. Remember, he's measuring his words, so it's exactly what she wants to hear. So they don't take the shortcut, they take the long route. And Daisy's making a lot of sounds that indicate that she really does admire this place. And Nick mentions how strange it is that there's no. He goes to the house and there's no one there. You know, he's used to it being a place where all the parties are going, the big parties are going on. And so we have a description of the inside of Gatsby's house. Through the Marie Antoinette music rooms and restoration salons, and Nick keeps expecting to see guests, keeps expecting to see them hidden somewhere, and when he goes past the library, he thinks he hears the ghost of the old owl-eyed man that we saw in the party two chapters ago, who's about to break out into laughter. Then they walk through these countless, bedrooms, period bedrooms, that they're designed to look like a certain period in history. Everything's done according, exactly according to that time in history. I think you understand what I mean when you go to extremely fancy houses. The design would be according to a certain theme or a certain era. And they pass one person who is doing some kind of exercises on the floor, and he's called Mr. Clipspringer, and he's the boarder. Don't know who he is. Anyway, so then they get to Gatsby's bedroom. It's called an apartment because it's his bedroom, and it's a bath, and it's a study. It's a whole bunch of rooms together, but this is his private area. And they drink, and he takes a glass of chartreuse, which is an expensive drink, from a cupboard in the wall. And he has been looking at Daisy all the time. He's looking at her because he wants to see the house through her eyes. I mean, this is a moment that he has been waiting for, that finally he can prove himself worthy to Daisy. So really, it's all about her. And he's kind of in a dreamlike state. He stared around at his possessions in a dazed way, as though in her actual and astounding presence, none of it was any longer real. Once he nearly toppled down a flight of stairs. Okay, so he really is in this kind of dreamlike state. And his bedroom is a very simple room, which is a strong indication of who he is. That really, for himself, he doesn't really need all this fancy stuff. Except where there was garnished with a toilet set of pure dull gold. So the set where for his shaving and everything, it's very, very expensive. Daisy takes a brush, she smooths her hair with it. Something kind of really odd and strange about this moment, and I'm just going to read you the passage so you understand a little bit about what's going on. He passed visibly through two states and was entering upon a third. Okay, so the two states was the planning and the expectation of seeing Daisy, but now he's with her and everything's come to fruition. has actually happened and been realized. It reads like this: after his embarrassment and his unreasoning joy, he was so consumed with wonder at her presence. He had been full of the idea so long, dreamed it right through to the end, waited with his teeth set, so to speak, at an inconceivable pitch of intensity. Now, in the reaction, he was running down like an overwhelmed clock. So it's this is the whole thing, that we spend our lives getting ready for certain events. But what do we do when the events actually happen? What next? Where are we going to go now? Then we have this scene which is done very nicely in the movie, where he shows her his clothes, which is kind of a weird thing. Like, somebody from the upper class wouldn't show a woman his clothes. Okay, he says, I've got a man in England who buys me clothes. He sends over a selection of things at the beginning of each season, spring and fall. So he takes out this pile of shirts and begins throwing them one by one. Shirts of sheer linen and thick silk. Obviously, this stuff is super, super expensive. It's all handmade. And he's just throwing it down as if it doesn't mean anything, because like shirts have to be kept nicely, otherwise they get creased, they don't look good. Description of all the beautiful colours of the shirts, and coral, apple green, lavender, faint orange with monograms of Indian blue. And Daisy has a very strange reaction. She bends her head to the shirts and she starts crying. And she cries because they're so beautiful. It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before, which is kind of makes us wonder a little bit about Daisy. What sort of a person would cry because they see something so beautiful? Does that indicate to us that she's a person who's got values? She's a person who's moral? She's a person who's deep? Or does it mean that her guiding light is materialism? Like, that is what speaks to her. Of all the things you want to give her to speak to her, it's these silk shirts that come from all over that are in all different colours. That's what's going to make her cry. So you need to think about that. Then they go to the swimming pool and the hydroplane, which is something that's used for a type of water ski, and they see the midsummer flowers, and it looks like it's going to rain again. And then Gatsby says, if it wasn't for the mist, we could see your home across the bay. You've always have a green light that burns all night at the end of your dock. So now we're beginning to understand the symbolism of the green light, and the fact that when we first see Gatsby looking at the green light, we understand what the symbolism of this place is. This is his longing. This is him trying to attain the unobtainable. And also we understand that Gatsby bought this house to be close to Daisy. He deliberately bought a house which was opposite Daisy's house. And Daisy puts her arm through his. And it says possibly it had occurred to him that the colossal significance of that light had now vanished forever. Okay, compared to the great distance that had separated him from Daisy, it had seemed very near to her, almost touching her. It had seemed as close as the star to the moon. Now it again was again a green light on the dock. His count of enchanted objects had diminished by one. So now, because she isn't unobtainable, the meaning and the significance of this green light has gone. So what is he going to aim for? He has her. Okay, where is he going to go now? So he's looking about the room. It's getting dark because of the rain. And there's a picture of an elderly man in a yachting costume, and Nick says, "Who's that?" And he says, "That's Mr. Dan Cody, who used to be his friend, and he's dead now." And to Nick, there was something a bit familiar about this. The name. The name sounded familiar. Okay, so we're going to find out a little bit more about that later. And there's a picture of Gatsby in his yachting costume. Yachting costume is a special outfit that you wear in a yachta. And when he was much younger. Daisy says, "Oh, it's lovely, it's so nice. Your pompadour. You never told me you had a pompadour or a yacht." And then And then he says, look at this, Gatsby. Here's a lot of clippings about you. Okay? So he's taken clippings from newspapers. A clipping is when you cut a piece of a newspaper which has something relevant in it. In those days, that's what people do. And he obviously has been following her, you know, because she's in the social columns in the newspapers. Her name is mentioned. And Nick's just about to ask to see the rubies that apparently Gatsby was collecting when he was in Europe, when the phone rings, and Gatsby picks it up, and he says, I can't talk now. I said a small town. He must know what a small town is. Was no use to us if Detroit is his idea of a small town. Why is he asking about a small town? What does he mean by a small town? What type of dealings is he doing? It's very mysterious. And then we can understand now a little bit what Gatsby sees in Daisy, because she mentions she looks out. She's a dreamer also. She looks outside and she sees the pink and gold and foamy clouds, and she says, "Oh, I could just push you around in one of these clouds," and that sort of thing would really appeal to Gatsby. And then Gatsby has this idea he's going to get Klipspringer, this other guy who they passed by, to play the piano. And so they bring him up, and he says, no, play the piano, even though he seems to be woken up. And so Gatsby insists, and they're in the music room. We have like this song now that Springer's playing on the piano. He's doing whatever he can. It's like almost theatrical. He's creating this scene to impress Daisy. He's got to have the music, you've got to have the wine, he wants to show this beautiful house, everything has to be just perfect. And in the meantime, we have a sense of the passing of time. All the lights were going on in West Egg now, the electric trains, men carrying or plunging home through the rain from New York. It was an hour of profound human change. Okay, this is an excitement was generating in the air. This could be talking about a lot of things. Profound human change, meaning Gatsby and now being reunited with Daisy. It's also, we're talking about the 20s. We're talking about the expectation, the excitement and the optimism that happened in the 20s. But now if you think back, it's so ironic, because what happened just a little bit later, in 1936, there was another world war. Straight after the 1920s, we went into a deep depression. America went into a terrible depression when people lost millions in the stock market. But this idea of holding on to that excitement and that emotion, which is impossible to do. Time will always pass by. Things will always change. So Nick goes over to say goodbye. It says, as I went over to say goodbye, I saw the expression of bewilderment had come back into Gatsby's face. Bewilderment means, we gishavud, and as though a faint doubt had occurred to him as to the quality of his present happiness. Okay, almost 5 years. There must have been moments even that afternoon when Daisy tumbled short of his dreams. Okay, so he's saying it can't be that everything in the past has been recreated exactly the way it was. He's saying it has to be that Daisy couldn't live up to his expectations, because when you dream someone, it's always much, much more than when it actually happens in reality. Not through her own fault, but because of the colossal vitality of his illusion. Okay, that his illusion was so alive that there's no way she could have lived up to it. It had gone beyond her, beyond everything. He had thrown himself into it with a creative passion. This really shows us who Gatsby is. Gatsby is somebody who is a dreamer with a capital D, adding to it all the time, decking it out with every bright feather that drifted his way. No amount of fire or freshness can challenge what a man will store up in his ghostly heart. Okay, whatever reality is, it can never match the hopes and dreams that you have. It's all about expectations, and expectations, unfortunately, sadly, get disappointed very easily. So So he watches him, and Gatsby adjusts himself. His hand took hold of hers, and she said something low in his ear, and he turned her with a rush of emotion. So something very intimate is going on. I think that the voice held him most with its fluctuating feverish warmth because it couldn't be overdreamed. That voice was a deathless song. Very interesting. So they're completely absorbed in each other. They've forgotten Nick altogether. And Gatsby just doesn't know who Nick is anymore. Everything's been caught up in Daisy. He says, I looked once more at them, and they looked back at me remotely, possessed by intense life. Then I went out of the room and down the marble steps into the rain, leaving them there together. So again, there's this very intense moment, and then Nick is gone.